Today we're talking about binding our RadioLink RC6GS transmitter to our RadioLink R7FG receiver. Let's get into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and thanks for tuning in. As I mentioned in the intro today, we're talking about radio binding, specifically binding the RadioLink RC6GS to the R7FG receiver. Now, I'm not going to get into many of the details about the receiver and the transmitter since I've already made an unboxing and first look video on these. So if you haven't done so already, you can check out that video if you'd like. I'll link it in the cards on the screen here, and I'll also leave a link in the description below. Now, because I talked a lot about the features of that transmitter and receiver combo in my unboxing video, today's video is one I'm making for a couple of different reasons. The first is fairly self-explanatory, to walk through the steps needed to bind an RC6GS transmitter to an R7FG receiver, including all the extra items you'll need in order to do that, which we'll get into in just a moment. Now, I've never bound a transmitter to a receiver before, which means this is going to be a learning process for me. So I figured I'd bring you guys along for the ride in the hopes we'll learn something together. The second reason I'm making this video is because I'm preparing for my upcoming build series on the Tamiya DT03 racing fighter. My plan is to use this receiver as well as the other components you see on the table here for that build. And well, I need to bind the receiver to the transmitter before I can even get into that build. Now, before I actually get into binding the transmitter to the receiver, let's take a look at some of the other items that I'm going to need in order to actually do this. So obviously we have the transmitter, the RC6GS, as well as the R7FG receiver. Those are a given. But here I also have a battery pack. Now this is a sort of standard issue 6-cell 7.2 volt Venom Power 3000 milliamp hour nickel metal hydride pack. The next item is actually this harness, which was included with the RadioLink transmitter and receiver. Now this harness actually sits in between the battery and the speed controller, and not only does it provide power to the receiver, but it also allows the receiver to monitor the in-vehicle battery, so you always know just how much power the vehicle has. This is actually especially useful if your ESC doesn't have a low voltage cutoff for LiPo batteries. That way you can monitor it, and in this case you can even set an alarm in the transmitter for that low voltage. Next, I have a couple of adapters. These will allow me to go from a Tamiya connector to an XT60 connector. In this case it's the same one, a Tamiya connector to an XT60 connector to connect to the RadioLink harness. Next is the steering servo. Now in this case, for this build, I'm actually going to be going with a Savox SC1257TG digital servo. I should mention, strictly speaking, I don't need the servo present in order to actually bind the receiver to the transmitter. However, the reason I'm using it here is because once I've actually bound the receiver to the transmitter, the servo itself will actually zero itself to its neutral position, which is something I'm going to need for the upcoming racing fighter build. So I might as well do it now while I have everything connected. And the last item is the electronic speed control, or ESC. In this case, it's the Tamiya TBLE02S speed controller, which was actually supplied in the racing fighter kit from Tamiya. So now that I've run through all the items that I'm going to use for this exercise, well, let's get started actually connecting everything together. First things first, I'm going to connect the ESC to the RadioLink harness using this adapter. Here and here. Good. Next, I'll attach this to the harness as well, so that way I know we can go to the battery. Next, I'm going to use from the RadioLink harness, I'm going to connect the power lead to the receiver itself. Now, this connector here actually connects to these two pins right here at the very top. They're actually labeled here on the receiver sticker. This is where that power lead will go. The red wire goes to the positive. There, that's connected. So the next item I'm going to connect is going to be the steering servo, which is the 3 pins right next to where the power went. This is channel number 1. So channel number 1 on the R7FG is the steering. So the steering servo will connect there. I should mention, these outside pins here, this whole row of pins, these are the ground pins. The middle row of pins, I'm really hoping you guys can see that, the middle row of pins is your voltage, and the inside row of pins, or the very far left row of pins, is the signal. So this is important to know when you're going to connect your electronics. Now in this case, the steering servo will go like so. Good. And now we need to connect the ESC, which is, of course, the throttle connection, which is channel 2, which is right below where the steering servo are connected. So now we connect the throttle. Good. So there we are. Everything is now connected. Now we just need to apply some power. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn on the transmitter itself. Now I've already gone ahead and put batteries in this. Takes 6 AA batteries, so the transmitter itself should be good to go. I can just turn that on right now. Here's the on-off switch. So the transmitter is on. We can see the display is on, so this is ready to accept a signal. Let's plug in the power. All right, so our battery is in. The switch for the ESC is currently in the off position. I'm going to turn that on right now. There we are. So we can hear the controller, or the transmitter right now, is giving me an external low power, which means it's actually reading the battery as being low power. Now this is something that you can actually set. Here we go. Now we go down into the settings. It's way down, by the way. Into alarm, press enter, and we can change the voltage that we want the alarm to set off at. Now right now it's actually set, it was set at 11.1 volts because this is assuming that you're setting up a 3S LiPo pack. In this particular case, that's not what we're doing. In fact, this battery is only 7.2 volts, so I've got to set this below 7.2 volts for this alarm to stop going off. And there it is. I'm going to leave it at 7 volts for the time being. Good. So that's that. Great. So we don't have the alarm. Now, I believe the receiver actually went ahead and bound itself to the transmitter. But just in case it didn't, all you have to do, there's a button on the side where the 2 antennae come out of the receiver, and according to the instructions, all you have to do is press that button for longer than 1 second and it will go through and bind itself to the transmitter. So let's do that right now. And we can see that it's flashing, and then once it stops flashing, that means it's now connected to the receiver. And we can verify this by simply turning the wheel, and we can see, I can certainly see, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can certainly see and hear the receiver, or the servo, sorry, the steering servo itself actually turning. So we're now bound. My servo is now set to its neutral position. In fact, one last step before I put this little project to bed, I'm going to take the opportunity with a pen, and I'm just going to mark right here so that I know where the neutral position is on my servo. Just in case this moves, I know to set it back before I go ahead and put my servo saver on this servo when installing into the racing fighter. So there you have it, guys. Relatively straightforward process, but that is how you bind your R7FG receiver to an RC6GS transmitter. I hope you guys found this one useful, or at the very least somewhat entertaining. If you did, feel free to smash that like button. And if you want to follow along with the upcoming DT03 Racing Fighter build, please feel free to subscribe and hit that notification button so that way you're notified whenever I do upload a video. And thanks again for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.